Before starting my presentation, allow me to begin by thanking the organization for the invitation addressed to me and also for having chosen such a topical issue as the discussion point of this meeting. I would like to share with you our experience working in the urban-rural interface forest and fighting against fires in this area and the consequent protection of communities. The best way to start would be to share with you only this year's experience of a forest fire in Valcomeias, Miranda de Corvos, right next door. It began on August 9th, 2015. The alarm was sent out at 20 minutes past 4 in the afternoon. In this operation theater, we involved 628 operatives, 200 engines, 6 air means, and 819 square meters of area was burnt. The temperature at the time was 38 degrees Celsius. In red, you can see the perimeter of the fire. This area has many valleys between hills crossed by the Ceira River, and eucalyptus is the predominant fuel. In yellow, the spots in yellow, well, you can see Valcomeias where the fire began. In yellow, you have the communities that were threatened, 13 in total, and they were dispersed over the territory, as you can see. So in yellow, as you can see, the locations were very scattered, which means that this involved double the efforts. Primarily, our goal was to fight against the fire, but immediately our mission changed and the target became protecting the communities. All operatives, the firefighters, jeeps, had to make an extra effort to protect the populations. In red, the triangles in red show some of the risk populations that had to be evacuated. Actually, in the end, we did not have to evacuate them because the fire in the end developed favorably. The fire then spread to Poiares and Lousã with great violence, and finally even in the city of Coimbra, as had happened in previous years in 2005, namely. We managed to reduce the burnt area to limit it to 819 square meters. So we divided into sectors the operation theater, A indicating Coimbra, and then B, Varandas de Ceira, and then Charlie sector in Lousã, and Delta sector in Miranda do Corvo. So as you can imagine, several populations were in danger. And therefore, our operatives had to double their efforts to prevent any harm from being done to people. And in the end, no home even burned, with the exception of an attic. Already during the aftermath, during the decompression stage, we were protecting a home we were protecting a home, and once we thought that that home was saved, we turned to other communities, but some embers or other flaming materials set the attic of that home alight. This is a picture that clearly illustrates the problems that the firefighters on the terrain had to endure. As I said, as the fire spread, the intensity also increased in several directions, to west and also to north and south. The timeline that you see here indicates that the alarm was set at 4:20 in the afternoon. And the lookout points indicated that the fire column was already very intense and violent, and at 4:21 we had already mobilized 8 cars and 2 airplanes, in a total of 45 operatives. And then we activated 2 airplanes right at the beginning for the initial attack. Then at 4:28, another 2 lookout points said that it had identified 2 fire fronts, and therefore the means had to be reinforced. So 30 minutes later we already had 10 cars and 2 airplanes acting. 30 minutes and 10 minutes later, we already had realized that we had a very heavy forest fire, and we requested 2 additional heavy equipment to fight against the fire. But everything developed very quickly, and when we soon after, there were already 6 communities that were in danger. In Portugal, in the first hour, it is very difficult to evacuate anybody, particularly when we have a very quickly spreading fire like this one. So we either reach very quickly one population, or we can hardly reach out to everybody, which was the case. Then the fire crossed the National Road 17 and heading towards Poiares, and there were a lot of projections. At 90 minutes, in our command post, we identified 2 fronts, one approximately 1.5 kilometers and the other one around 1 kilometer. At 2 hours of the fire front crossed the Rio Ceira River, and 100 or 2 hours later, we had already identified 3 fire fronts, each of which 2.5 kilometers. So clearly a very violent fire with 3 communities in danger, 3 settlements in danger. And even worse, at the end of a half an hour of firefighting, our operatives, our fighters, our men and women are exhausted by the end of the first hour. The fact is that to unroll the hose pipe, to extend it, just the whole preparation, and the setup takes up a lot of energy of our men and women. The road means were, as I mentioned, 628 operatives, 200 cars. We involved, by the end, already 6 air means had already been involved. And if we add up all of this, and if we estimate that each settlement has around 15 houses, we clearly come to the conclusion that the 200 cars were not enough to protect each home that was endangered by the fire. A picture is worth more than 100 words, and as you can see here, this whole house has some safety area because it has a garden in front, and it is somewhat on a hill, but it was exposed to the fire because it is surrounded by an eucalyptus forest. So in the end, it was in this situation. So clearly one car is not enough here. And there were two anti-fire brigades fighting this fire. But you can imagine the heat that this house was exposed to, so it required more than just one car to protect it. As for population protection, obviously there's always a lot of waste around the houses, a lot of vertical and horizontal fuel surrounding homes. And people are just left with relying on God to protect them. The shelters obviously caught fire. No use crying over what all of the assets that are lost, but the real danger is when gas storage recipients are stored in shelters like these, for example, which bring additional fuel to the fires. This picture tells us that there is a lack of fuel breaks around the houses. People forget to clean the terrain around their houses, and then when finally fires break out, they become completely lost. This is a picture that tells us that there is the need to clean up and create fuel breaks. And thanks to this here, the fire was unable to expand over to the other side. And due to the intensity of fires, many cross rivers, cross highways, motorways. And for that reason, firefighters feel the need for ensuring certain means and ensuring that those means are available close to settlements to ensure the protection of populations when fires as violent as these break out. To conclude, a forest fire in an urban forest interface. In the case of a fire in these areas, the strategy of fighting has as a priority the defense of people. The means available in the operations theater, the means are absorbed by and with the people and the settlements. Direct fire and indirect firefighting is cancelled in favor of defending populations. Over 75% of staff by the end of the first half of the fire are exhausted. In the future, we will have to rethink the methodology of housing defense, like ensuring that houses have the appropriate use the appropriate type of shutters. Uh, One good example is Penella, the village of Penella, which built some water tanks and ensured that the population have hoses and therefore the means to start fighting a fire before fire brigades and the firefighters arrive on site. There is also the need to rethink houses, land use and planning, and the authorization of buildings in certain locations. Thank you very much for your attention.